Ooh.
There we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Fridays Dire Literary Series. And my special guest and feature tonight is January O'Neil. And we will not we will not go over her bio. I will not read it, but there it is. And we'll highlight some
Oh,
stuff.
there it is. Oh my gosh. There
And
it is.
let's start from the top. Ta-da.
Oh.
And this isn't about me. It's about January. And she's authored three books: Rewilding, Misery Islands, and Underlife. She has been assistant professor of English at Salem State. She's also taught at in Mississippi, and she was a John and Renée Grisham writer in residence for the University of Mississippi, and she's served as executive director of the Mass Poetry Festival. And her articles have appeared and poems have appeared in the Academy of American Poets, Poem a Day series, American Poetry Review, New England Review, Ploughshares, and Ecotone, among others. And so now I'm happy to present January O'Neil.
Well, thank you, Tim. Now my head's really big on my screen, so I'm actually going to minimize. I'm going to be like the cool kids, and I'm going to try to read off screen. I'm so used to having a book in front of me. So thank you for letting me read on a snowy Friday night. This is awesome, so thank you. So I'm going to read four poems. The first one is from my book. The others are new. And so the first one is my poem Brave, and it is a long poem. It's in 5 sections. What do I want to say about? All my notes are actually in my book. Back in 2001, I was about to get married, but our wedding date was September 15th, 2001. So that was right before 9/11. And we were supposed to fly actually on the 12th. And so you all remember, nothing was moving out of the area, couldn't fly, couldn't take a train or anything. So this is a poem that talks about that, but also jumps back and forth in time. Again, it's in 5 sections. There's a raccoon in the poem. And the last stanza has 3 lines in it, so it comes up quick. So I'll just pause between the stanzas. There is a swear in the poem, so for those of you who have kids around. Brave. A thin layer of ash, fine debris, probably bone, coated the windshield as we passed exit after exit for the Garden State Parkway. We took detours and back roads while police blocked every on-ramp. Blue lights pulsing. Officers in yellow hazard vests stood next to their squad cars as we drove past midnight. My soon-to-be husband, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and me in my 1992 Grand Marquis on our way to Virginia. On the radio, nothing but news and static. All of us silent, sleepy, edgy, uncertain, both absent and present on an empty highway driving past New York City. I would never tell my daughter that some nights I lie awake listening for the raccoon I know is in the attic, but we pretend isn't there. The scratching, the heavy scampering, she hears it too. If he were here, Daddy would check things out. If he were here, Mommy would not feel so lonely. We pretend to be brave, bang on the walls, play loud music to scare it away. Pray it does not have kids. Marriages fail. There is no one else to go up there and get the little fucker. On our day in court, my lawyer was late, so the judge moved our case to the afternoon docket. We sat for hours, you on the left side, me on the right, listening to failure after failure. the quick dissolve of marriages into oblivion. I remember thinking, Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. The moment when the judge calls your name and uses words such as irreconcilable, broken, and final. And a swell, no, a surge of tears breaks as the judge uncouples us. You cried too. Neither of us looked at the other or spoke. When I turned around, you were gone. You had left the building. Before we arrived at the hotel, we took engagement photos in our wrinkled clothes. And before that, we watched the sun rise as we crossed the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And before that, we listened to Howard Stern around 5 a.m. broadcast live, trying to find the right words, any words. And before that, you took the wheel from your brother so he could get some sleep. And before that, silence. And before that, you held my hand as we rode in the back seat. And before that, we were not allowed on the Garden State Parkway. And before that, we stopped for gas, sandwiches, checked the check engine light somewhere in Connecticut. And before that, there was a toll on the Tobin Bridge. And before that, I was on the phone with the maid of honor who would ride the bus from Texas to Virginia to arrive by Saturday. I thought she was crazy. And before that, I was on the phone with my father who said, "Be careful, and I love you." And before that, no flights were allowed out of Logan Airport or anywhere. And before that, I said yes. And before that, you said yes. And before that, I asked, should we go through with the wedding? I would never tell my daughter that male raccoons have no part in raising their young. Thank you. That last stanza comes up quick. Okay, so that was from the book. So I have some newer ones. And as I was reading it, I realized that like that Hallmark reference, Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. I use it in the poem I'm about to read. So these three poems appeared in Green Mountains Review at the end of last year. So I'm going to read those. This is well, it's a pantoum. It's called Boyfriend Pantoum. Hallmark doesn't make a card for this, for what we mean to each other, for what we do when the kids are asleep. We are not married, not husband and wife. What do we mean to each other? More than lovers, more than friends. We are not married, not husband and wife. One card says, know what I love about you? Or to my partner, to my friend, with the inside left blank. My boyfriend asks, what do you know about me as he brings me water at 3 a.m.? With the inside left blank, I write to the man I spend my nights with, who brings me a glass of water at 3 a.m., whose body was made to fit inside my body. There's no one else I'd rather spend my nights with. Who are we when my kids are asleep? His beautiful body fits inside my body. Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. And so another poem, another romantic poem. This one's called The Great Hello. Another swear popping in on this one. A big ass moon rises full and wide in the western sky. The deep pond awakens with the tongues of bullfrogs. I'm barely over the threshold before our mouths lock and we slither onto the bed. We watch each other, watching each other with a silent urging, a kindness for the other in pursuit of pleasure. I fling my head back as he grabs my hips, pulls me close, I begin to feel myself levitate, hovering above the bed as the shadow of someone I don't recognize but have known all her life. I am an over-easy egg trying not to break her yoke, but I do. The joy of leaving the body tender and shimmering. A moment of gratitude for every daunting thing that brought me to this place where I am my most fearless, my most true. I wick the sweat from his head, slide my hand across his glistening skin before crawling back into myself, sprawled across the sheets, streaked in moonlight. And I'll close with this one. This is called The Beyond Place. Eat for the hunger that comes, says our guide, as I try my first service berry, purplish globes, sweet with an almond finish. I am a first-time forager, marveling this marvel of a landscape made lush by the rush of the Hoosic's underground waters. The name, he tells us, was translated from Algonquin as the Beyond Place. Generous June. Every tree surrenders its green flags while we crouch ground low, spy the wide splays of leaves, their dark papery undersides sent messages from below. This plant is edible. This one will kill you. I climbed out of one world, tongue first to taste another. City girl, chicken of the woods. Yet here the humid wind softens the cicada's strident song as we root and snip, bend stems back to the point of breaking to discover wild carrot, or is it hemlock? Stick with the berries, I tell myself. A rough twang, a touch of funk. Trust the joy I know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, January. That was a fantastic reading. So let me talk to you a little bit about Brave there, which you said was a long poem. Is that the longest poem you've ever written?
You know, Misery Islands has my second book, Misery Islands. The poem Misery Islands is, that's the longest poem I've written. This is probably the second longest. But Misery Islands, I've never read that poem, actually.
Why not?
Just never, you know, it was a hard poem to write because it was a divorce poem that I wrote in the thick of divorcing, and I just never felt like I had the right setting to read it in. And then after a while, I just didn't want to read it.
Is there any other work within your poems that you shy away from if it's about a certain person, place, or thing?
No. That's now it's just a thing. I probably could read it at some point. It would be just fine. But no, I write about everything, and I don't publish everything, but I'm published, I'm comfortable with.
And so we have a question outside. What songs keep raccoons away?
What songs? I don't know. Anything that I apply my voice to would probably keep a raccoon away.
Now, you were born in Virginia. You
Mhm.
went to Old Dominion University in Virginia. You got your MFA in New York. You've lived in Beverly. You taught at Salem. You went to you were the writer in residence at the University of Mississippi. So I'm more interested in what was it like going down to Mississippi from New England. Even though you have some Southern experience, was there some culture shock?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm from Virginia, so being in the South, and I spent many in Atlanta with my grandparents. So being in the South is not that big of a deal. That being said, it was quite a culture shock for my kids, uh, for lots of reasons, like having to make new friends and being pulled out of their high schools to start a new high school. But the Mississippi, dealing with a lot of problems that the rest of the country, seems to be scratching the surface with. I mean, the divisions in race and culture, and I mean, they're just out in the open, but not everywhere. And I often say that Mississippi is not what you expect, but it's exactly what you expect in some ways too. But the people are kind and wonderful, and it's just beautiful down there. I mean, I miss it. I mean, I'm gonna go back. I hope to take the kids back in the summer, go down there and see my boyfriend, and go down the Mississippi River in a canoe. That's the plan.
So Oxford, it's such a well-known literary hub. It's for Faulkner and Larry Brown and John
Mhm.
Grisham, Ace Atkins.
Yep.
Does it live up to that? Like when you walk through Oxford, are you like literature? Like it's
Yeah, in a way, like you can't throw a stone without running into a writer. Certainly on the poet side, Beth Ann Finley's there, and Amy Nez, and Derek Harrell, and Melissa Ginsburg. But you're right. Like I met Ace in a Starbucks and just, run into him like quite a bit. Never met John Grisham. He's actually in Charlottesville, but he goes down, you I always seem to miss him. I was never ran into him. Yeah. But yeah, it's got a terrific literary scene, um, it lacks the writers down there, there are a lot of them. I didn't get a chance to, I think, to explore like all of what was there. It lacks a little diversity, among the writers. For the most part, certainly a more diverse place than here.
now, how long were you there? Like, were you down there during the pandemic? And if you were, did you feel a little bit cheated?
Yes, and yes. So we were down there. We actually, let's see, we went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras because that was about the time of my birthday. So we were there a week before it was in full swing. Thank goodness, because they had an outbreak down there. We went to AWP in San Antonio at the beginning of March. Came up here about March 10th that week because it was a school break, and then quarantine.
Now, when you were a writer in residence there, do you teach courses?
Mhm. I taught the focus for that residency is just to write, but I taught one graduate class in the fall and one in the spring.
And when you're teaching, what do you see young poets tend to write about? And do they write about different things in Mississippi than they do in Salem, Massachusetts?
Well, well, I mean, well, in the graduate program there, those young writers were doing things that my undergraduates don't do on either, there or here. So graduate students, the graduate students there were, some of them were reading for journals and publishers, like big publishers. They had won contests. A few of them have been in, poetry magazine. I haven't been in poetry magazine, so uh, much like many of us. But as far as what they write about, I'd say between the undergraduates there and the undergraduates here, there's still a lot of, writing about the self and I, and now it's hard to write because a lot of us aren't doing much. That's certainly true for students. So.
Are there
But
any
no,
go?
I didn't see, there weren't, I didn't have a lot of students writing like about, you know, I, there wasn't that much that was, distinctive about the writing. I mean, it was all like good and it was all a certain level, but I didn't see topics that were unique to one location versus the other.
Are there any go-to piece of advice or poems that you have for your students?
Um, oh God, I have so many. Use the senses. Uh, try to imagery and detail. What makes we all will write about snow. We've all experienced it. So how do you write about something that everybody knows? So what is your perspective? You know, maybe you're writing a poem that you hate snow. Well, why do you hate snow? Trying to get students to move beyond words like beautiful and pretty, and trying to get them to go deeper. That's kind of what I'm trying to get students to do.
And did the atmosphere of Mississippi, oh, sorry, did the atmosphere change how you wrote while you were in Mississippi?
Well, I had time, you know, and so Ella, my daughter, said this today. She said, essentially it was good that, we had, kind of used to this pandemic living. Everybody's used to it now, but we were doing it like a year before because when we moved, we didn't know anybody. So we know a few people, but we didn't have places to really go and hang out. So we were isolated back then. So we were kind of used to it. And so for me, having the space and not having to get up and, have to be anywhere, um, to be able to walk outside and walk. I was on property that had 77 acres. So I get out and I might see a deer or a vulture or something, Yeah, so it was just a different vibe, and I really enjoyed it. And I was able to bring a little of that back up here. And certainly, when you're not, like you said, you don't have a 3-hour commute anymore. When you're not doing that, you just have more time.
No, your homepage was the Poet Mom blog. Did you ever find it hard to write as a mom?
Always, yeah. That was yes. I still find it hard to write as a mom. Um,
Uh,
yeah, I mean I will admit it's easier now that the kids are older and they're a little more self-sufficient, but it was hard. But that I think that was part of what made the writing challenging was finding time to do it and having a group of people to complain to about not being able to write. But you still managed to do it.
Now, do poet moms create poet kids?
Good question. I'll let you know someday. I have potential for one. I had two students who were very good in English.
Now, your website, at one point you said goodbye to because it was hard
Oh
to
yeah,
keep up at the labor of love, and then suddenly said hello back to it with some great
I
stuff.
know.
Now, have you ever done that, like say with a form of poetry, like damn, I'm gonna say goodbye to the villanelle for a while, and hey, I just got a villanelle.
Well, no, my approach is, gosh, I'm tired of writing about the same thing. I'm going to try to stretch myself a little bit. So I wish I got tired of writing about the villanelle because then I'd have a bunch of villanelles. But no, I do like to stretch myself a little bit and try different forms. So, it really depends on the mood.
And sometimes you get questions that come out after what we were talking about, but I do like to ask them all. Do your children ever object to being put in a poem?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do your children ever object, or have they ever objected to being put in a poem?
I have one poem about Ella when I was potty training her that she's not particularly fond of. As I have said all along, they can write their own stories and their own poems when they're older, and they can tell their side of the stories. But again, I try not to publish anything that they would be embarrassed about. Even the poem I read about the brave, the one about divorce, I was the first time I think I read that in front of them. We were in Florida at Sanibel Island Writers Conference, and I laid out my set list, and I realized I hadn't talked to them about this poem, and they were in the audience, so I did talk to them before I read it, and they were okay with it and are still okay with it.
Now, you held the position of the executive director of mass poetry. What was that like?
It was great. I miss it. And I said, I'm glad not to be doing it. I'm glad. So, MP Carver's running it and the festival's coming up. And I believe the days are the 13th through the 16th. I think it's a day longer than it normally is. So, um, when I was doing it was great because it was like calling up my friends and saying, hey, can you read? Pulling in a few of them and then having all of you come together. I know, Tim, you were really active, in the years I was there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I miss your videos riding around with Kim Adenizio in the car, you
Well,
know.
I do these videos instead. We're just not driving.
Right, that's true. It's probably a good thing. So yeah, I
um,
do miss it, but I'm excited for MP and I'm excited for mass poetry. I think I did everything I wanted to do with it, and now it's their turn, and I couldn't be more happy.
what was the hardest thing about it? Like, what don't you miss at all?
I don't miss being up at 1 o'clock working on a spreadsheet. Not in the least.
And in your opinion, what's the weirdest poem you've ever written and why?
I don't know. I saw that question come in. Thanks, JD. I have a poem and rewild. It's not weird, but I have a poem called Tom Brady's Balls. Wrote, I have certain, I feel a certain kind of way about Deflategate, and I thought it was a raw deal. So I wrote this poem, and I remember going over it with my editor, Baron Wormser, and I told him, I'm not sure if I want to put this in the book. It just seems kind of silly. And he said, put it in. It may be, one of your readings, it may be the only poem that anybody laughs at. And so that was really kind of an important lesson to think about, like your poems, a range of poems, and all sorts of notes, because you never know who's going to find them, where they're going to end up. So I was happy that poem went in.
So is it important to have a little change up in the middle of a poetry collection?
Yeah, I think so. Well, it all depends. I think it depends on who you are as a poet. I mean, all of my stuff ultimately leans towards joy. So, I pride myself on, talking about serious issues. And then, I towards the end of my books, they all tend to be lighter. So that's just kind of who I am. But it all depends. All depends on what kind of tone you're setting for the book, and where you see the arc, I guess.
I love that my features are always prominently in front of books and bookshelves. Make this, maybe I'll make this a new feature. So turn to your right, grab a book, and tell me a few sentences about it.
Okay. I was okay. For some reason, I have a lot of Michael Lewis's books. He did Moneyball, The Big Short, Liar's Poker, Boomerang. He sits right next to Phil Levine's book, Bread of Time. I have a subscription to Masterclass, because pandemic. What else are we gonna do, right? So Roxane Gay just released her new Masterclass. So one of her books is up there. I took Bad Feminist down off the shelf, and that's what I'm probably going to start reading again soon.
So, based on your reach and your descriptions and where you pointed to, you alphabetize.
Yes. Yeah, why, yes. But I don't like organize by color. I do my closet. My closet's organized by color.
Do you separate by types of books? Because in mine, I've got poetry's there, the
Yeah,
nonfiction's there.
yeah, these are all fiction, nonfiction. And the poetry is here and overwhelming. I've got another shelf just in front of me, and my office is just overrun with books.
And do you have like 40 bookshelves of books you haven't had time to read yet?
Yes, yes, yes. Haven't had time to read in a pandemic. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and reading for us and answering some questions.
Sure.
And so, another thing I ask folks is to support their favorite local indie bookstore. So, if you would like to purchase January's books, what is your favorite indie bookstore?
Well, I have a few, but I will go local. One of my favorites is Copper Dog Books in Beverly, Massachusetts. I
Okay.
think they just ran an article in the Globe about them, so that's awesome. They expanded their bookstore. They run deliveries locally. So if you live in Beverly, they will bring a book to you.
And if you don't, they'll send it to you.
They will send it to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once again. And I'm now going to say goodbye to the Facebook folks. Thank you for watching on Facebook. If you would like to attend and be involved in the open mic or throw questions at our features, use the Zoom link the next time. And also for you folks, next week we'll have Elle Nash, who is simply a wonderful fiction writer. So I'm going to say goodbye to you Facebook folks right now.